we take her? I said, sure. So Misty came, surrounded by 755 reporters, cameras, came into all the fanfare in the world, and she walked onto the property, all, I don't know, 9, 10 tons of her. Wow. And it's like, what do you do with an elephant where you do not have a place to put this elephant? So the trainer says, well, do you have some trees? I said, yes. Good. Show us the trees. So she came onto the property. They tethered her to the trees. I have 2 huge oaks that almost make a canopy. And they put her in the middle, and we put some fencing around her to keep people from going towards her. And then we began the hard task of how do you look after an elephant when you're not geared to deal with elephants.
You could have got on Google.
Yeah, back then.
So 3 times per day, we took the bulldozer out. We dug a swimming pool. 3 times a day, we took her off the tethers, took her swimming, took her walking, took her browsing. She was with us for 6 months. I was never so happy to see anything leave my care. I was so unprepared. But she left in good hands, she left in good stead. So the Waystation has always responded to what needs to be done, we will do it.
And where did she go?
She went to Florida. She belonged to owners in Florida, and they finally got all the paperwork cleared up and all the bureaucracy cleared up, so she was able to be trucked back to wherever she came from. But I kept for 6 months, and I learned more about elephants than I ever wanted to know. I've had the pleasure of having 2 other elephants, and I sincerely hope that there are elephants facilities now that I don't ever have to do that again. But for years we do. So, we have lions, tigers, chimpanzees, monkeys, coyotes, wolves, bears, a plethora of animals. The reason the Waystation came into existence is because people love to have exotic animals as pets. And I was telling someone just outside, if you have a normal home and you buy this cute little ocelot and it's adorable and everybody comes to see it, you buy the same thing with a baby lion and everybody comes to see, and they bring their children and they take pictures with the baby lion or the baby ocelot. A few months after that, this very same baby lion is looking at those very same children like they're lunch. The bloom is off the rose. The neighbors are no longer enchanted, and it now says, you know, it's a scary thing. My kids could get eaten, or my dogs could get eaten. And so they start to look for a place to put this animal to. And they would call the zoo. The zoo would say, no, thank you. We have all the monkey, ocelot, what you need. Then what happens? And the jungle drums go through Hollywood. This is how my business started. And somebody would say, gee, didn't so-and-so, who was a writer in Hollywood, marry some gal that came from Africa? That automatically made me an expert in every field. I knew everything. So, and I started getting animals in from everywhere. Motion picture people had animals, private individuals had animals. There were no regulations in those days. The first regulations came to be in 1976. By that time, I'd had lots and lots of animals in my care already. And we incorporated in 1977. We moved on to the current location where we're at right now in 1976. We were the first sanctuary for exotic animals in the United States. We were also the first facility to take chimpanzees from biomedical research. A lot of work was done to help chimps, orangs, gibbons, to come out of biomedical research. But when New York University School of Medicine, who was the first biomedical facility to say, here are the chimps. And they were releasing 200 chimps. There was no one to take them. No one was ready for them. There was no facilities. There was no budget, and there was basically no money. Jim Mahoney called me up finally. He said, "You have chimps, I understand." And I did have chimps. He came to visit and finally convinced me that these chimps needed help, and I began to take chimps in for biomedical research. We couldn't take them all. There was not enough money. There was not enough time. But we took somewhere between 60 and 70 chimpanzees at that time, and they did not get re-entered into biomedical research. So we were able to help that much. I wish we could have held them all, but no budgets. Anyway, that's who we are, and that's who we do, and that's how long we've done it. Any questions about?
Do I understand that chimpanzees can be very dangerous animals? And how do you deal with that part of it?
Don't marry
Marry them?
You know,
Marry a chimp.
in inappropriate hands, or with inappropriate behavior, most species can be dangerous. Chimpanzees are a very volatile species. You know, there is a conversation about chimps evolved. God made everything. Whatever it ends up to be the truth, if God made us, I have to tell you, he had a great sense of humor. Because he took the same dough and the same batter and he mixed it all up. And he says, this is chimps and this is people. Okay, I'll throw this in for the chimps and I'll throw that in for the people. There is no difference between raising a baby chimpanzee and raising a human baby.
Amen.
But when they mature, their maturity also brings forth this explosive personalities. They're very full of themselves. And if you do not understand chimpanzee, you will make mistakes. And if you make mistakes, you're going to get hurt. So the motion picture industry and the circus world has always presented these chimps as these adorable little things dressed in clothes. That's not what a chimpanzee is. They're like that for the first 5 years of their life, sometimes 6. They live to 65 years of age.
Wow.
They're everything that we are. Our children mentally develop and grow into who we are today. A chimp's growth, mental growth, is sort of arrested somewhere at the level of a 5 or a 6-year-old human being. And that's where that stops. So it's a whole, we're the same but we're very different. And yes, they're very dangerous. There is no reason to interact with adult chimpanzees. There is no reason to interact with chimps if they have chimp families. Chimps should be with chimps. They're not anybody's pets. They shouldn't live at people's houses. They should not do, they don't belong in our world. They belong with their own kind. But sometimes they're orphaned. I've been privileged, perhaps. I've raised many chimpanzee babies. They were not cared for by their parent. And so I've raised them from birth. I've raised them from when they were some months old, which is why I can say there's no difference. I'm more familiar with raising chimps than humans, but nonetheless, it's so they belong. What a chimp needs, the greatest enrichment, the greatest gift you can give a chimpanzee, is let it live with chimps. That's what they need. Anyway, there was a question? Yes?
So I'm reading the book Water for Elephants. I don't know if you've read it.
No.
But anyway, it's just very interesting about circus animals and how they were treated, and I'm just wondering if what your opinion, I mean, this is basically, a lot of it is from a long time ago, but I'm assuming that how circus animals are treated now is very different than that. But have you rehabilitated circus animals, or?
Yes, animals, they're extremely philosophical. By and large, most of them are. You can have an animal come in that's traumatized. I had a bear come in that did not eat for close to 30 days. Would not eat. And every time it saw a human being, it ran and 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 ran. When there was nobody there, it was quiet. But when somebody approached, it wouldn't touch food. And then one day, in desperation, I'm sitting outside the cage, and I have one of those 5-gallon cans of yellow clean peach halves.